I should say we are going to welcome our first panel discussion of the day on the topic, the effects of print and electronic media on popular culture. Ooh, that sounds like a good one, huh? One of the most important carriers in the production, transmission, and propagation of popular culture is mass media. Keeping this in mind, this panel of multidisciplinary experts will attempt to unravel the connection between mass media and pop culture. Please join me in welcoming our session moderator, Faith James, certified personal and social branding strategist, and the CEO and founder of the Personal Branding Consultancy, LLC. And she's going to take the proceedings ahead. Hi, Faith. Welcome.
Thank you. Mic check 1 2. Thanks.
Check, check.
Check, check.
Check. Okay,
Check.
everyone. How's your being? How are you being right now? When we get ready to have this really important discussion, my invitation is everybody to sit up, forward in your seats. As I'm asking and we're moderating questions, I want you to be thinking about your own answers to these questions, because this gets to be really important. This is one of the most important things we're going to be discussing in terms of impact and influence on popular culture. That means every single person that you connect with, every single person who's a client or a customer is impacted by what we're about to talk about. So, as we get moving, this is the panel discussion. Just make sure you're in the right room. The effects of print and electronic media on popular culture. Are you in the right room? Yes? Okay, great. All right, so my first question for the panelists, and I'm going to have each of these esteemed leaders introduce themselves, say a little bit about who they are, so you understand why you get to listen to them, why they have license to speak on this topic. The question is, as we think about the impact of print and electronic media, we get to level set on what is media. Who is media? Who decides what media is, what it does, how it flows, how it moves? And so with that big, huge question, I want you to start thinking about it. What is media? When you hear the word media, what comes to mind? I'm going to throw it to the beautiful KARRIE. KARRIE, introduce yourself and tell us what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, am I on? I am. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I am KARKI. I am founder and president of White Box Marketing. We are located in Minneapolis, Minnesota area. So I will tell you, coming from Minnesota to 100 and some degree weather is a change for me, but all good. Thanks, Faith, on the question. You know, I think in my world of being as a marketer 20 some years, I like to think I'm 25, but in my head anyways. Media, it's everywhere that we live and breathe. It no matter if it's digital, traditional measures of media today, social media, we all know that. So, you know, a lot of what I think that has affected, especially when we're talking about this last year, is, you know, the pandemic, affected a lot of different things. How we look at things, consumerism, piece of that. Also, I was just talking about the symbolism of what is pulp culture, what is the media, and then how do we relate to that today. I know we're gonna get kind of in depth, so I'm just gonna talk high level on it for now.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. KALIE.
Thank you.
All right, am I on? Hi there, I'm KALIE Fright. I'm the founder and CEO of Atlas, a tourism marketing agency in Oklahoma City. And so, similar to what you said, it is hot here. It's like a summer barbecue. And so, in relation to your question, I think what is really interesting about trying to define media is historically, before it was, you know, we had different media outlets that we'd get our information from. Because of the rise of technology, now you have digital creators. Now you have brands that are also bringing information. Everyone is now a part of media, and so I think it's going to be a really interesting talk today, just talking about like the ethics and regulations and stuff that kind of is involved in that.
Thank you.
Mic check. Okay, good. My name is BECCA COOPER, and I am a brand strategist, and I own Shubu Creative, which is a brand-centric marketing firm focusing on creating brands with purpose and impact in today's competitive market. As we all know, I'm sure all of you would love your clients to have strong brand presence, and you yourselves need brand presence. So how do we do that? And it's hard. And to answer that question about media, what is media? I think it's changed. It's changed from a one-way distribution that we think of like radio and newspaper to a shared content, collaboration, and creativity with just regular people are able to now create content in so many ways, and on YouTube and everything else, and Twitter and TikTok, so you name it. I think media has totally changed, and the answer is pretty complex. So I'm excited to talk about it with all of these talented panelists today that we all just met. So it'll be exciting to see what we share.
Thank you. David.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is David TRACY. I'm the CEO and founder of Northgate Marketing, an international marketing firm located in Des Moines, Iowa, but serving worldwide. And I was thinking about what is media, and I grew up in Central America in Panama. My parents ran a nonprofit, and I frequented indigenous villages way deep in the jungle. And I think what was interesting is these people who don't even have electricity, who live in a hut in the river, have media but don't realize it. So they're making jewelry out of Coca-Cola bottle caps, and they're they do get a battery and they'll charge it up to a TV and watch an old pirated movie. And then you realize that the pet monkey is named Jackie Chan. And you're like, do you know who Jackie Chan is? And so they have this one movie that they watch, and they were inspired by it, so they decided to name the pet they all love. And it's weird because it shapes, it's weird how media can shape in its own cluster, and I think media is what people have available to them, and that's what influences them to make decisions.
Brilliant. Thank you. Carrie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Nogus. I am partner and managing director of a firm called Tag Collective, based out of New York City. We focus on story scaling, which encompasses everything from digital marketing to social media to traditional public relations and more. It's a fascinating question to ask what media is these days. I think if you ask anyone, they'll have a different answer. Some people think of traditional media relations or social media, or maybe even media buying and advertising. But kind of to piggyback on what David was saying, I really think media is what influences us, no matter what it is.
Brilliant. And for you, what did you come up with? What is media for you? What does that mean for you? Certainly anything that influences or impacts or changes consumer behavior falls under the guise of media, because it influences, it takes you in a place that maybe you weren't going to go. And it's really important that we think about who's at the front of that. So when we think about print media specifically, that's been around since, early American pre-revolutionary times. And journalists, right, were heralded as these really amazing superhumans who could curate the who, what, when, where, why, and how of a story and bring the fact. And if you do anything with financial institutions, you understand the notion of a fiduciary responsibility, right? That they do first all good for the consumer. And that was what journalism was, print media was, when the traditional journalist held the helm. Question for the panel. Who could present themselves as a journalist? Is it somebody who's gone to journalism school with a degree, a master's, a PhD, or is it the young woman who captured the footage of George Floyd being murdered on national television for 9 minutes? Is she a journalist?
I'll jump in
Your
here.
talk.
Really quickly. I think that, digital media is really, really going at a lightning speed right now. And we think of traditional media back in the day, and it was print media. Journalists had a lot of control, but I think now social media and the way it's going, everyone can be a journalist in a certain way now. Of course, we have traditional journalists who are verified and are very credible, but it's interesting to see how that's now moved into a segment where with so many platforms, people have so many different ways to speak to the public and voice their opinions, and it doesn't necessarily have to be double-checked now.
Yes, love that. Who else has a thought on that?
I'll just kind of piggyback on that as well. So I think, as a all-encompassing ad firm, one thing that I hear and I see is like, we've got, digital media, traditional media, and there's been such a big push in the last how many years of just everything being so digital. I might be opposite of a lot of marketers, but I really believe in the value, old school, of like the whole marketing mix. So if everyone is jumping just on the digital platform, it's saturated, right? Again, I'm not saying that we don't have to be there. Of course, it's a value. We do a lot of it. But again, it's making that influential piece of it, is it digital? Is it traditional? Answering your question more on the piece of journalism, it's all about storytelling. We hear this every day as marketers. We say it all the time. It's very cliche. We kind of get tired of saying it, but it's very true. We're all telling our story, no matter if it's a brand story, our personal story, our client story. So today's social media, as we were talking about, everyone has a voice now versus like old school where it's just journalism, going to journalism school and being that. I mean, if you even think about media today, no matter what your political views are or not, what's reality anymore? Journalism used to be fact-checking and kind of being midway, right? Presenting both sides. That has so changed. So my challenge to all of us really is like, what we're reading, what we're putting out there, how is that influencing us today? How is that making our decisions change? How is that influencing for our clients and their clients? It's just changed in society today, and I think a lot of it is we're all a part of the story of The Voice on that, and we're all journalists in something, but I think that what we have to kind of go back to is also looking at, are we doing the right thing, and being very smart consumers of stories on that side, and also doing some research. Sorry, that was a long response, but God, I could talk about that all day.
No, and it actually gave me I want to pivot the question to the rest of the panelists. So, the idea of being an actor or actress, when you appear in either 2 or 3 or more commercials, you naturally become a member of SAG. All right, you guys know this to be true, yes or yes? Naturally become a member of SAG because you showed up in 2 or 3 commercials. Should this young woman naturally now become part of the media, get a press pass, access at the White House, because her story, she produced it, her story has now contributed to such a flow, such a movement worldwide. So that's the question for anybody else on the panel who wants to take that. Should she be considered a journalist? Should she have a press pass? Should she have walled-off access at the press briefings? Anybody wants to take that on?
I think there are a lot of variables, and it depends. And I think we'd all like to say, yes, absolutely. But I think nowadays there's that term that's oftentimes cliche of the influencer. And, there's the person or someone who maybe had influence at one point for a certain topic, but then maybe they fall back after a time. But then there's those who ongoing have that influential presence. They're regularly sharing stories. They're regularly presenting stuff that people want to view and that people are sharing virally. Those people, I would say, definitely are considered, in my mind, journalists. They're the type of people who are naturally influencers. But there are instances of people who happen to be in the right place at the right time with their phone, capturing something, and then sharing it with the world, and and we're so glad they did. But should they be a journalist? I'm not sure. I don't know enough information beyond that.
I love that. Who else? Becca.
Well, it's interesting when you ask that question because I actually did go to journalism school, but I do not consider myself a journalist. And I think about what it takes and having to be objective. That's one of the goals, and to fact check. But piggybacking on what David was saying is that I think that there are some standards to when you're sharing content and you're on a beat and you're diving into the details and you know the facts and you're checking those facts. But on the other hand, this question is so complex because we're all journaling things every day when we're sharing them on Instagram, every moment of our lives. So in a way, we're all content creators and we're all journaling and sharing our thoughts and expressing our creativity. And I just think about one thing is just when we do that, we're influencing those younger than us and those around us. And it's important to think about what we are saying and how we're saying it, because we can do so much good with it.
I love that. We're always influencing. We're always influencing. So for everybody here, do you think of that, what Becca just said, that you are always influencing, whether it's an Instagram, whether it's a Facebook, whether it's a LinkedIn, that you are influencing somebody, someone, somewhere? And do we get to be really, really, really focused on how we're being, our beingness? Next question. We're going to talk about mental health. We're going to talk about emotional triggers that may come from print, digital media, people feeling their First Amendment right is to share and show everything. And then where is the responsibility, or should there be a responsibility? Because I have not declared myself a journalist, therefore I'm not responsible for your reaction. Let's talk about the media. images. What is too much? What is not enough? How are people being impacted by this need to share broadly, transparently? We're praying for the people in Surfside, Florida. There's been a lot of stuff that might be triggering. How do we handle that as media? How does the media handle that need to share, but also need to take care? Who wants to take that? Carrie?
I'll jump in. I think that people really need to recognize what they're putting out into the world, and unfortunately, we're now living in an era where it's easy to throw a spigot against the wall in terms of what we're saying and see where it lands. But I think that's why it's so important to really maintain your messaging. We've developed something called story scaling, for example, where you have to be mindful of what you're saying. It's not just about the marketing. It's not just about the PR, the social media aspects. You really have to maintain your presence and how you're presenting yourself personally and for your brand as you enter the world. I unfortunately think that sometimes younger generations haven't recognized this quite yet. We see this whole cancel culture coming into effect as well, which honestly kind of terrifies me. I hope one day I never get canceled, but it's interesting to see how it is evolving and, watching the decades over time. We go from print to digital to now this culture where you can post something in a matter of a second and even we see things happening from years ago being pulled up from people who are saying things that they didn't quite mean to say at the time. And it's a really interesting world that we're living in now.
Thanks, Carrie. Who else has a point on that? Go ahead.
I think it's really brought to light kind of the, how media has changed over the years. Before, at least for me, like I've seen journalism, the whole goal of it was to not have a bias, was to tell just like the story, like the facts as they were. And because of the expansion of media, now it really is, you kind of hop across that fine line between storytelling versus just telling how it is. And so it's brought up a whole new, as far as like marketing ethics go, back in the 50s with copywriters like David Ogilvy, back then they wanted to sell you happiness when you would purchase something. And I think what we've seen in today's culture is, no, that product didn't make me any happier, or no, that pair of shoes didn't make me like 6 more feet taller. I don't know. And so I think the biggest shift that we're seeing in marketing is people aren't craving necessarily the end goal. They're craving like, essentially, instead of you being the end all for their needs, can you help me at least get a step closer to that goal? And so I think we have to be careful as marketers not to, I don't know how to explain it. And so I'm getting tongue-tied, but not, I don't know, I lost the train of thought. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Keep your bias.
Yeah, and so, okay, thank you. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. And so, yeah, as for marketing, you want to make sure that, because we are kind of a mix of storytelling and information, that we have to be really careful about keeping our biases in check.
Yeah, that's really important, this idea of bias, ethics, storytelling, fact-sharing, fact-telling, truth. What is truth? Whose truth? What side of the truth are we looking at? It's a big, massive question when you think about what we've been going through, even on the political sphere, that you look at an apple or a banana and two people can look at it and have completely different points of views and know that that's happening all over the globe with your products, your brands, your services. And so when you think about the role of media in communicating what it is that your brand, your messaging is about, I want us to talk about my bias, insidiousness of advertorials mimicking the authenticity, the value of media, a story, an article. So for those of you who've ever done that, I want you to really think about this and what that means to you. So we're borrowing from what looks like a news article, because media has credibility, truth, understanding, and we're now creating advertorials to make it look like it's news to influence for the benefit of ourselves, brands, et cetera. So I'd love for the panel to talk a little bit about advertorials in news publications like Forbes or Times or any of those that are heralded as high value news, and then they allow advertorials that borrow from, but they're really just selling stuff. Who wants to go?
I'll jump in here. So unfortunately, I think that a lot of people don't recognize the difference between advertorials and organic editorial. It does take a lot of time, effort sometimes to go into securing a story, going through numerous interviews with reporters, the fact-checking process to create a beautiful story. Versus an advertorial. That being said, I mean, if you think about it, it takes between 8 to 13 touch points to really get to someone. So I think that whereas they're completely separate things, it does all play a part of this game in getting the word out and getting your message across the board.
Go ahead, Becca.
Well, I'll make this quick. I just think listening about advertorial and organic content and thinking about from a branding perspective, it's really important to be really authentic to what you believe and who you are and really dive deep into the truth of that, because why would you shape, I mean, you want to shape things around your audience and what they're thinking too, but try to just stay true to yourself, because otherwise you're putting a message out there that isn't very authentic.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. David?
I think there's something to be said about personal responsibility, and I think we all have it. We are personally responsible for the things that we allow ourselves to watch and believe, to fact check them, number one. We're personally responsible to, I believe, unsubscribe and unfollow people who are non-factual or speaking lies. I love the unfollow button. I think that personal responsibility is really important in those areas. I also think that sometimes we need to be careful to not assume something. I think there's a lot to be learned from a lot of different people and different perspectives. And if we can take the time to listen and understand it before we jump to conclusions, then we can know if we made the right decision before we write them off.
So much goodness. Carrie, go.
I just want to tie in. I think from a marketing standpoint, I've seen a lot of some of our clients going from traditional, ad, print, digital dollars to doing more advertorials. And the reason with that, I think the big thing is the why. I think as marketers for us, if it's for our own companies or for our brands, our clients' brands, is telling the why of things. If people understand the why do they need this product, or why does this company make this decision, or are involved in certain things, telling that story of the why, I think, is really the influential thing that people are searching for today. They want more of that value proposition in there of why do we make the decisions that we do, or why are we exuding this brand, and how does that benefit you?
Yes, absolutely. Simon Sinek actually says it best. Nobody cares about what you do until they know why you do it. So that's a really good provocative question for the entire conference. Why am I doing this thing that I'm doing? I wanted to jump back onto this idea David had about personal responsibility, because I love this topic. And level 4, leadership responsibility, looks like this. I am responsible. Not I'm taking responsibility, I am responsible. So as consumers, as brands, we're all responsible for media and what it looks like and the impact. And we're also responsible for where we get our information. So I want to talk about the political scene for a bit. When we look at the presidential race, anyone, and where people are sourcing information to make decisions on candidates, what are your thoughts on people saying, I get my news about the political candidate from late night TV, a radio disc jockey who's on, Hot Dish now? Let me hear from everybody. This is a question from everyone. When it comes to the political race, when it comes to presidential race, is there a should in terms of where people get information on political candidates, or is it just all for a game? Carrie. New York, Carrie.
I am not one to really tout on the politics side of things. I think at the end of the day, unfortunately, you cannot control everyone, and everyone will continue to have their opinions. That being said, I as David did say, I hope that everyone does take personal responsibility at the end of the day, and that's all I can ask for.
We live in a society with free speech. I love that. I love that. That's not the case in many parts of the world. And that has its pros and cons. I think, though, we also live in a buffet society. We have a lot of options. We can choose from so many options. If you just look at streaming services, how many options do we have? So I do think that it is important for people to have the right to choose what they want to watch and where they want to watch it. But I think that with that personal responsibility statement, I think that we've become a little bit passive and a bit apathetic as a society, when there have been things that have been done wrongly, that we haven't risen up, and lately people have been rising up and saying, speaking up for themselves and things. But I do think there is a justification for some cancel culture, but I also think there can be cancel culture taken too far. And this is where we have to have informed decisions.
Thanks, David.
As marketers and branding people, I totally agree. There's a personal responsibility to really look into what we are putting out there, what messages and what visuals, and understand different views. So whether or not you look at one, it's great that we have all these choices. It has helped me personally in my career to look at different views, different perspectives, to dive deep, to interview different types of people, different stakeholders. So when you do put together whatever that piece of communication is going to be in whatever channel, that you have different views and you've tapped into other people's perspectives. So personally, to answer the question, it's probably, I look at different sides and I look at all the different views, but there's different places that I go on the regular where I get my political news. But at the end of the day, I think what I'm trying to say is it's really good to gather those different perspectives before you stake your claim or whatever it may be about your brand or your marketing and your product.
Thanks. So.
All right, there you go. Sorry, I'm having mic issues. And so, piggybacking off of what you said, I think a lot of it has to do with, instead of being so quick to argue, being quick to have conversations. I think we're not gonna get away from having all these media outlets, but I think instead of just, okay, I heard it from one place, so therefore it is, we need to not just ourselves be like, okay, I heard this story, let's look at it for another 3 to 5 outlets. But I think it's also important to know, okay, which outlets tend to veer, to the left or to the right or however which way. But then also, both my parents and grandparents are teachers. And so from an education standpoint, I think we also need to be challenging, whether it's our peers, our friends, our colleagues, heck, our own children, just to, when you hear something, just don't take it just at full value, question a little bit, talk about it. And I think that's the biggest thing we can do is just condition each other to dig a bit deeper and not take things at face value.
Yeah, I like that. Dig a little deeper. Carrie, okay.
I piggyback that all the time, even at home as a marketers that we are and influencing other people is, because you read something or because it was published, doesn't mean that it's actual. So as in our own agency doing PR for companies, I can do a press release out, I can get it in the paper or online. I was the one pushing that content. Is anyone fact-checking my content that I push so you read? So I tell my own children, because you read that or you saw that, doesn't mean that that's necessarily accurate. So going back to the question of personal responsibility is, I too, all of us have influencing out there and pushing content too that you may be reading and assuming that it's all accurate. Of course, from an ethical standpoint, of course, we're pushing stuff that is ethically standard, but is everybody else.
Yeah, I love that. And when we think about the motivation, right? We think about the motivation of media, whether it's print, whether it's digital. What is the motivation? Sort of like, using my acting analogy, a director would say to the actress, here's your motivation. So giving her the energy, the emotion in terms of how she gets to deliver the lines and that moment in the scene. What is the motivation for print and digital media? Is it to curate, produce, share information that's going to be for the greater good of the consumer at the end of the day? Or is Nielsen their daddy? Those of you in the industry know what I mean when I say that. It's all about ratings, right? Is Nielsen your daddy? And what do we think it should be versus what it is? Anybody can take that. Go ahead.
I mean, listening to you, when you were talking about ratings, I was thinking, or likes, or it could be getting likes, getting comments. So I think there could be some things out there where the intention isn't necessarily pure. So again, another just something to reflect on is when we are putting out that content, yes, we want to have engagement, and yes, we want to get that attention, but we also need to think about what we're putting out there as well.
I love that. It's sort of asking yourself the question, if only one person saw your post and took action, bought something, did something, would you feel satisfied, pleased, or you're waiting for 1,000 people on it? David, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, and I think that with that term, influencer and such, I always kind of joke with different people, oh, I'm an influencer, and you're like, and inside I kind of chuckle a little bit, are you or are you not? And that's not even a right statement for me to have made, because the reality is this, we all influence someone. And so some people may influence millions of people and they have that many followers or subscribers, depending on what platform they're using. Whereas others may only have 1,000, but those 1,000 people that chose to follow them were people that chose it for a reason. And we have a responsibility to continue to communicate to those people effectively.
Yeah, I love that. We're all influencers. Let that be your key takeaway. Somebody hashtag that on Twitter. We're all influencers, hashtag MARsum 2021. We're all influencers because we're either being influenced or we're influencing. So this morning, I influenced myself, I think, to go downstairs and stand in line for Starbucks coffee for 30 minutes. Right? We're always influencing. Oh, honey, I need X, Y, and Z. Daughter, I need, we're always doing it. So don't think we're set apart. Question, superpowers. Let's think about superpowers. If the media, print, social media, all of it were superheroes, which superhero would you want them to be, and what superpowers should they use to impact the world?
She should have pre-gave us that question.
That was a download. Sorry.
I'll just start it without overthinking this, so I'm just throwing it off the cuff, which is, as marketers, that's what we do. But I'll just pick Wonder Woman, right? Because Wonder Woman is strong. As a female founder and owner, I am proud of that. I have a lot of staff that are, I'm all for men too, but in empowerment. So I'll pick Wonder Woman just for the fact that she can do all things and she's strong.
And what's her one power that she's using to impact popular culture? And you can make one up.
She's influencing and empowering other people to be strong just like her.
Empowering, love it. Okay, who's got next? David.
I'm a big MCU fan here, so I would say Captain America.
Okay.
I think he exudes compassion, and he exudes a lifestyle of charity and love. And that, yes, he's strong, yes, he's able to do that, but and the way he treats people, he was the thin, short, non-popular kid who chose to save the world. And it's behind all that muscle, there he is. So I think that's why I like him. I think that if we all operated that way, in love and compassion, in how we communicate, we would get pretty far.
I love that. So let's just pause for a moment on that. We only have 2 superheroes so far, but we've got Wonder Woman and Captain America, empowering, compassionate, and love. Imagine content, imagine the news only being funneled from those wells. What would the influence be on our culture? Just think about that. If the only news coming out was about things that are really empowering others in this country and beyond, if it was all about love being demonstrated across the world, if it was really about being compassionate, doing it onto the least of these. Jesus says, when you do it onto these, you do it onto me. What would the news cycle look like? What would our social media feed look like? And what do we think about that? Becca, what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I think it would be great if we were all pushing out messages of love and not really getting into, fights and heavy heated moments on social media platforms. And I would hope that we could somehow, move towards a better world that we're living in.
Think about the impact.
I like the idea of that.
Yeah, isn't it great? I think we get to do something about this. Becca, what were you going to say?
I think that it would be wonderful to see people get inspired to take action and make a difference. And while it's important to be informed, because you asked the question of what their job is, I think, we need to be informed and be aware of what's going on. But as, especially recently, we're seeing a lot of these social activism and awareness campaigns coming out, and it's really driving people to take action. And while on the other side, there's the negatives of all the things that we see, and what does that cause? So while we need to see what's going on in the world, just being inspired to take action.
Yeah, love it. Did you want to give us a superhero? No? So, but listen, I love this idea, and I want to invite every single one of us to take action on this, to do something about this, right? What if you had a day, a piece of content, a day of the week, whatever it might be, where all you're communicating is love, relevant and related to your brand, where you're only talking about empowering things relevant and related to your brand? Just think about the impact. We talk about the effects, and it's sort of like, oh, it's them over there, those bad media, those people. But level 4 leadership is I am responsible. And so we've talked before that we are all influencers, we are all content creators because we have a social media account, therefore I am, right? To take responsibility, to be in responsibility, not even take it, to be in responsibility, to know that I get to do this thing called impact the world for good. I wanted to have each of you share either a moment or a story that impacted you from what you saw on social media. So one of the things we think about is never, ever, ever believe everything you said. We talked about that, right? Because there's this idea that says, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. There are those who ascribe to that way of being, and so being in responsibility, we get to fact check. We get to develop our own sense of understanding of what's important for us. So share, if you would, a story that maybe you saw from somebody's social media, you saw on the news, that really either impacted you specifically. What did it cause you to do? What did it do to you, so we can really bring to life what it looks like when somebody sees a piece of content and the resulting end result, because we often don't see that. Who wants to take a go at that?
I don't know if this is necessarily a full-blown story, but I will say I'm the first who always falls for any sponsored ad in front of my face that is selling me something, unfortunately. And I guess that kind of plays to that. The point that you're making is that you cannot believe everything that comes your way, whether it's on social media or in print or digital, wherever it is. And I've gotten some weird stuff in the mail before that looked nothing like the thing I thought I purchased. So I guess it kind of plays to that as well.
I love that. And exactly. And you're not a victim to the media. You're not a victim to social media. You're not a victim to print media. You're not a victim to, you're a victim to no one. You're a leader, you get empowered, you find your source of information. David.
I'm still trying to formulate that answer because there's so many different stories.
Yeah.
I will say that recently there is one account on Instagram that I've been following now for about 7 months, and it has nothing to do with reality. What was that? It has nothing to do with reality, and basically it's a woman named Tara Milk Tea. That's the name of her Instagram handle. She's beautiful, but she's creating like a heightened reality through her photography. The color blending, the way all the photos blend, and she creates an entire experience that heightens beauty that is already there, but collects it together in a way that makes it very, very mesmerizing. And so I like that because I feel like with as much reality as we have in the world, yes, there's real problems in the world, but there are certain influencers that show us the beauty, and that's what I like.
Awesome. Love that. Becca.
Gosh, it's such a hard question, but I've been influenced by a lot that I've seen from things that are even, I'll admit, like superficial things, like beautiful homes on Instagram that are decorated to the nines. I'll be the first to admit that I've looked at those and then done things in my own home. But then, from something that's a little more deep, I was influenced by seeing an organization called Raising Kindness, where they were influencing or teaching children to do good in their community. And I just thought that was so interesting. Like, we should definitely be getting our kids out there to give back to the community. So I saw that, and then I went to an event. Like, I just went to it and I showed up, and I don't know if you ever heard, like, just show up, because it can just change your life. So I ended up getting really involved in it, and I made really great friends, and my kids are involved, and they help give back and do activities where they learn that. But again, like I said, I've been influenced by other things that aren't as impactful, and I've purchased things like you have that ended up to be great or didn't. So I think every day we're influenced by what we see 24/7.
I love that. And so now you get to see the impact of actually using your superpowers for good, whether you're a brand or a marketer. And on BECCA, the resulting impact, she went and she joined this event, and she's now adding, right? So there's no such thing as perfection. We're striving for excellence, not perfection. So she's added this role, this new role of being a philanthropic, society person, whatever you might want to call it, as part of your being and how you're expressing yourself in the world. And I think that's one of the big ways that print, digital, social media can impact popular culture, is we can be impacted for good, right? It's not just about the bullying, the image, you're too fat, you're not fat enough. It's your ways of being. It's, Black Lives Matters, or it's not, or it's Blue Lives Matters, right? We can go there. It's easy for us to go deep, deep in the well.
I will say, there's this one story that did touch me recently, HBO Max. It was a meme, and it kind of brings it full circle. Pop culture is no longer just music or fashion or entertainment. It could be a meme. It can be a moment. It can be anything at this point. And the HBO Max example recently, where an intern blasted an email to this specific mailing list, and this meme went viral about people sending in their love to this intern and understanding and say, hey, we've all been there. So those kinds of stories make me really happy.
It's beautiful. And then when you're happy and you're raising your vibration, then you go do other magical things in the world. So it absolutely gets to be possible. So if you're thinking about, for your brand, for you, what are the things that you get to do? You just got some really brilliant examples, very simple. There is one gentleman, I'm gonna say on LinkedIn, he's got like 600,000 followers. Himanshu Ministry, I think it's called, I'm not saying it properly. But he's in financial services, and you know what he posts every single day? Who knows? Shout it out. What does he post? Memes on? Thank you, leaders. You're leaders. Let me hear that leader voice. Shout it out. What does he post on? Kittens and dogs. And from a branding standpoint, most might say, oh, that's sacrilegious. How dare you? Don't do that. You're going to damage it. And he's got so many people, because what he's doing, he's using his influence. Did I tell you he's got 600,000 followers on LinkedIn? Yeah? And he's using it to just spread love. A little duck and a little puppy hugging together. Aww. Spreading good. Feeling good. You walk into your boss's meeting, you're like, oh my gosh, this is great. Everything's wonderful. Just you saw a duck and a little puppy having a meeting, making it work. You think, I can do anything with this boss. I can make it work if a little duck, right? So see the power. This is why I keep saying we're victim to no one. Let's turn to the topic of the female body. Loads and loads of opinions and thoughts, and what is good and good enough, and what should and should be, and the media right there, just building it up, making their points be known. When it comes to how a woman, and David, I'm going to assume that you have some knowledge to speak to this, I'm going to include you in this, of what is appropriate, what's not appropriate, what should, does the media get to play a role in that for women or not? Who wants to take that? Carrie, go for it. I see you're taking your mic.
I'll jump. Of course, we all know that starting from back in the catalog days of Sears Roebuck, some of the old catalogs, some of you are probably way too young to even know what that is. But going back to what we put out there influences us. So if we're looking at a print ad, this woman looks beautiful. I want to look like her. I want to be thin like her. I want to be whatever that is. Have hair like her, skin like her, or him. Sorry, him and her. What we're putting out there, we relate to that. Again, it's that influencing piece. So I think a lot has transitioned, obviously, in the last how many years, where the look for what was quote unquote out there as beautiful has changed. We're seeing more ads showing different sizes of men and women, showing different ethnicities, showing collaboration. So again, just all that it's very much changed to saying, here's the, perfect figure of what we should all look like. We're trying to get out more things, even with clients and things like that, showing diversity much more than than maybe what they have, and or showing different body styles and things like that. So we all have an influence on that.
Awesome. Who else? Should media have a role in that? Should they even say what's good? Because here's the one thing, whether you're judging good or judging bad, you're still in judgment, and judgment is not a place to be. We just get to notice. I get to notice, she likes to wear her hair long. Noticing, not, oh my gosh, she absolutely should cut her hair short. That's not appropriate for this place, this way of being. What are some thoughts on that?
Well, I love my wife. And I have 4 daughters. And so it is a topic that hits home. I think that in marketing, we recently did some fashion photo shoots. My wife was modeling. And we had the conversation with our daughters about what is beauty. And what is beauty anyway? It is in the eyes of the beholder. Now, are there certain standards that we've now adhered to in society that this is beautiful because we see it on billboards, we see it on magazines? Or is beautiful an elderly lady sitting in a nursing home with beautiful blue eyes? Or is beautiful a pregnant woman in an indigenous village where I grew up? I think beauty is everywhere. And what I want to teach my girls is that they have value and they are beautiful because they are. Not because anyone defines it for them or anyone says they are. They are beautiful because they are, and they were created that way.
Absolutely. God says we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Done and done. No distinction needed. I love that. I love that. We are beautiful just because we are. Period, done, end of story. So as we come to our remaining 5 minutes or so, I want to find out from you, is there anything, any aha, anything that's opening up for you as you think about your business, your brand, your role when you leave here from this conference? What are you going to do differently? Are you going to take this idea of I'm not a victim to print, digital, social media? I mean, so many people's like, oh, I'm getting off because why are you getting off? Why are you getting off? Social media is a business tool, and people don't get to run you off the road. When you're in your leadership, when you stand powerfully, you understand that. You have access to 6+ billion people with your message, and you don't let anybody run you off the road. But you use it in a way that works so well for you. What's coming up for you? What questions do you have for this esteemed panel to help you break through, get to an aha, get you to a place where you're taking some action come Thursday? Not, I went to this amazing conference and it was wonderful and I forgot everything that they said. Somebody share for me what's opened up for you, what's landing, what's landed, what do you get to take away and start actioning? Anybody? What was that? Yeah, any question? Yeah, and did you have any questions? And I want you to notice, just be noticing right now, right? You're leaders of leaders in a conference that is your industry where you were thought leader, and you have the opportunity to stand, say your name, your company, and ask a question, and we're sitting. So what is the influence? So just stand up, because I can't see all the way to the back if you're raising your hand. But ask a question and notice, is it judging that we're worried about not asking a question? Yes.
Somebody.
We're coming. The spotlights are really huge. I can't see your face, so I'm looking for movement.
Hello.
Hi.
It's been really, really great to listen to. Thank you. My name's Lisa Cashman, and I run a marketing and PR business. And I would just like to know, I have a lot of clients that want influencers. They don't know a lot about them. But I was wondering if you guys had a grid system or qualifying tool or maybe some tips for us on how you qualify influencers. I get probably 10 to 15 to 20 influencer emails a day saying, please let me be an influencer for your brand. And I would love to know how you guys qualify them. And if you say, okay, these ones are always good, obviously you have the number of followers, give me the inside scoop on how you weed these people out. I feel like everyone wants to be an influencer, and it's getting a little old.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Let me just say, from a basic standpoint, do they align to your brand values? Do you know, number one, what your brand values are? So if it's equity, if it's empowerment, if it's freedom, and then you look to see, mirror match, have they done anything that's empowering or freedom-like in their way of being? So forget about the numbers. The numbers will come. This is sometimes we get so stuck on the numbers. Do you have 30,000 followers? But what type of followers? That's the key, right? When you think about brands that use Hollywood actors who are not aligned, that brand disruption is so damaging to that brand because they chose just based on the numbers. Oh, they have this much influence versus are they aligned? Would I let my daughter marry this brand? Son marry this brand? So anybody else want to give some additional things? But certainly mapping to brand values, huge, key, never leave home without it.
I think a big indicator is engagement. So are the followers engaging with the content? What are they saying about it? Or is it a bunch of fake accounts? Because that's also a thing. Or what's being evoked through their content for those who are following? I think you can learn a lot about that influencer based on the comments from the people. If they're giving positive feedback or they're reacting negatively or whatever it is, that's a really good indicator if that person's the right fit for you.
I love that, and that's a good reminder, David. One of the things that I do at my agency is we do a social media analysis, so we pull the person's name from Facebook, Instagram, wherever, and we run. So not just brand activity, because somebody could look like they're really killing it on social media. But when you do the engagement and you do the statistical analysis and you see, yeah, they've got a lot of stuff out there, but there's 0 engagement, 0 applause, 0 shares, then you know. So you want to have some tools and some information. So I'd be happy to share that tool that I use with you. But yeah, you definitely get to figure out if they have got real people. I like to say, if you want to know if you're a real leader, look behind you. If nobody's following you, you're just out on a walk. So you get to find out if these people are really leaders or they're out walking. Thank you for that question. I appreciate that. Anybody else before we wrap? Look at our time. We want to be in excellence. We're already over. Anybody else get to say who their name is and their company?
Hi, oh, that was loud. Hey, I'm CJ. I'm co-owner of Chatfully's communication platform. So, question on the social side, with the swell of social influence preferences online, people kind of yammering about their opinions and everything nowadays, a lot of them can be customers too, or users if they're non-paying, depending on how you define it. Point being, at what point do their preferences or decisions become more important than what the internal team is deciding for them to say? What are the variables that you would consider in terms of weighing those two audiences?
That's my time. So I'll answer this last one, and then come find the panelists at the conference and ask them more questions. They're really, really inspired individuals. I will say this, Steve Jobs, everybody knows Steve Jobs, abhorred research. Because intuitively, instinctively, he knew Apple was all about design, ease of use, and they just happened to make computing equipment. And he knew that within the core of who he was, and he just held firm to that. So you get to be decided and resolved. You get to build your business model. You get to see what that vision is and anchor to that. Just like when you think about Nike, what is a swoosh? Like who knew what a swoosh was? What is a swoosh? But Nike imbued meaning and energy and emotion into that, and now we all rally and say, yay, swoosh, let's just do it. So you get to be really fearless and resolved in your brand strategy and your ways of being. Panelists, anyone want to take that last one before? Okay, that is our time. I thank you guys so much. Thank you for being so engaged and so full out. This is a really important topic. You get to make a meaningful impact with the media that you have, and go for it. Thank you guys.